Some events in life are so uniquely structured that even the most creative screenwriter couldn't even imagine them. These events, shaped by the special dynamics of life, remind us of how strange the world can be. Survival stories are among these strange aspects of life. In this video, I will tell you a survival story that is entirely true. I emphasize this reality because some parts of the story might make you think, no way. If you're ready, let's begin. Ernest Shackleton had a dream: to make a voyage that no one had undertaken before, and to achieve this by reaching the Antarctic continent. However, others had already reached this continent before Shackleton. If he wanted fame, he needed to do something different. His goal was to reach the Antarctic by ship and then cross the continent from end to end on land. No one had done this before. Shackleton's dream was not something that could be achieved alone, so he gathered a crew of 27 men. Of course, they also needed a ship, and Shackleton would use a Norwegian-built vessel named Endurance, which was aptly named for its durability. In 1914, Shackleton's 27-man team set out on the Endurance to make history. They would indeed make history, but not in the way they expected, as they were met not with the Antarctic, but with a long period of crisis. As they approached Antarctica, the crew noticed that the temperature was much colder than anticipated. By January 1915, in the middle of winter, sea ice began forming, and the ship had already become stuck in an ice floe before even reaching Antarctica. The crew didn't panic immediately. After all, the ice would melt with the arrival of spring, and they could continue their journey from where they left off. However, the ice was particularly stubborn. The crew waited for 6 months for the ice to melt and for the ship to become usable again. As days went by, hopes dwindled. Moreover, the ice floes were putting pressure on the ship, breaking its parts and causing it to take on water. It was clear that the ship was doomed to sink. Shackleton gave the inevitable order: abandon ship. Everyone gathered their belongings and set up camp on the ice floe. They watched as their ship, which had brought them this far but couldn't take them back, slowly broke apart and sank. The sounds made by the ship as it was crushed by the ice were like a cry to the crew. The situation had taken on a different dimension. No one was thinking about Antarctica anymore. The only goal was to survive. Shackleton put aside his dreams of glory and fame. His new and sole goal was to get all 27 men safely home. Food was running out, winter was approaching, and, most importantly, morale was declining. Shackleton knew he had to first look after himself as the leader. If the crew sensed even a small amount of tension in him, it would reflect on everyone. Especially considering that the crew was blaming Shackleton for their predicament, his leadership was crucial. They were trapped until the weather improved, and if they wanted to survive, there was a lot of work to be done. Setting up tents, preparing a camp area, transporting supplies from the Endurance before it completely sank, and hunting for seals and penguins to avoid starvation. Shackleton began by assigning tasks and soon realized that for some, performing the same task repeatedly was tiresome, and there was a sense of injustice, as some tasks were more challenging than others. For example, the crew's physicist was consistently assigned difficult tasks and began to show signs of fatigue and depression. Shackleton noticed the physicist's body language and started giving him lighter tasks and speaking with him privately, which soon improved his morale. However, not everyone on the crew was quiet and refined like the physicist. For example, photographer Frank Hulley was egotistical and whiny, considering himself superior and wanting his opinions to be taken seriously. Instead of clashing with Frank, Shackleton flattered him, sought his advice, and praised his intelligence. Shackleton knew that Frank performed better when he felt noticed and appreciated, even if he wasn't entirely sincere in his praise. This was precisely Shackleton's approach, catering to each individual's needs, making them feel unique and special. Whether it meant bringing tea to the most whiny member or making sure everyone felt valued, Shackleton maintained strong bonds with his crew. Whenever tasks were completed, the crew would gather around the campfire to share stories, sing songs, and laugh, which helped keep their spirits up. Despite the tough conditions, they engaged in activities to stay active and entertained. Shackleton observed that even in these harsh conditions, he had managed to create a closely knit team capable of finding happiness. Though tension and disagreements arose, Shackleton skillfully managed to keep the crew united and focused. When someone became isolated or withdrawn, he would quickly address it with personal conversations to prevent further isolation and depression. The crew's situation was not unique. Many explorers before them had faced similar crises and lost their sanity, sometimes leading to cannibalism, murder, or suicide. For instance, 15 years prior to Shackleton's expedition, a Belgian Antarctic expedition had encountered a similar fate, and one crew member reported a lack of joy among the crew for months. However, Shackleton's crew managed to remain positive, making jokes and singing even after their ship's demise. Shackleton's exceptional leadership, courage, and crisis management skills were evident, but his greatest strength lay in his empathy. He could read the changing moods of his crew and respond accordingly, understanding that people don't always vocalize their struggles, but express them through their behavior and body language. After the Endurance sank, the crew eventually managed to escape. The ice floes around the Endurance began to drift, and though the ship was no longer usable, the surrounding ice allowed access to lifeboats. The crew took to 3 lifeboats and made their way to Elephant Island. The only hope was to reach the nearest inhabited place, South Georgia Island, 1,200 kilometers away, and contact local whalers for rescue. Given the risky journey across rough seas, Shackleton volunteered to lead a small team to South Georgia Island. This team, including Shackleton, reached the island but was initially met with fear by a local child who fled upon seeing them. Shackleton eventually found a whaling station and arranged for the rescue of the remaining crew members. Shackleton successfully rescued all 27 crew members. Despite not being received as a hero upon his return, as many saw him as someone who had endangered 27 lives for personal ambition, his leadership was eventually recognized and celebrated. Years later, journalists praised Shackleton's leadership, bravery, and crisis management. His story is a testament to the fact that even when we face failure, we can leave a lasting impact through our actions and character. In 2022, over 100 years after the Endurance sank, an underwater camera system captured images of the ship. Although many parts were damaged, the most intact section still bore the name Endurance on the bow, a testament to the resilience and endurance of Shackleton and his crew.